In 2018, the sheer walls of Pakistan's Latok, one claimed the life of Sergei Glazunov. His older brother, Evgeny, a titan of Russian mountaineering, lost his partner but didn't turn his back on the mountains. Instead, he chose the most brutal path, radical solo ascents. This path led him to the icy monolith of Aksu Peak in Kyrgyzstan. How could this brilliant soloist survive a deadly winter route, only to perish just meters from safety? 7,134 meters of icy silence and thin air. It's at this altitude that a person understands their true worth. We go back to Irkutsk. The date is December 30th, 1987. On this day, Evgeny Glazunov is born. His Siberian upbringing forges a core of steel, and by 2002, the young man takes his first steps into competitive mountaineering. When he starts his first serious training, he's only 14 years old, but his incredible determination is immediately obvious. His coaches see how quickly he absorbs technical knowledge and builds his physical strength. Just 4 years pass. It's 2006, and Glazunov makes an astounding leap forward. He joins a truly major high-altitude expedition. His objective lies in the harsh Pamir mountain range, the legendary Lenin Peak. To the climbers at the assault camp, the mountain looks like an impregnable fortress. Experienced climbers spend years working their way up to these kinds of altitudes, but here, climbing confidently alongside them on the steep terrain, is a 19-year-old. Step by step, he pushes his way through dense fern and piercing wind. His body is working at its absolute limit due to the severe lack of oxygen, but Evgeny withstands the colossal pressure. He successfully summits Lenin Peak. Standing at an altitude of 7,134 meters, he looks down on the endless mountain ranges below. This incredibly difficult high-altitude ascent cements his status in the climbing community and marks the first of many great victories. After descending from the dizzying heights of the Pamirs, the young climber faces a new, uncompromising challenge. Lenin Peak is now behind him, a symbol of triumph, and Evgeny Glazunov begins to rapidly hone his technical skills. Mere altitude is no longer enough for him. It's time to conquer smooth, sheer walls. The year is 2008. Evgeny arrives at the Open Championship of the Southern Federal District. Local experts and veteran judges watch the ambitious athlete closely. His goal is the formidable peak of Eridog. Glazunov chooses an incredibly difficult and demanding path for himself, the famous Efimov route, graded 6A. For those who aren't familiar with climbing, it's worth explaining a key detail. In competitive mountaineering, a grade 6 climb is essentially a glassy, vertical monolith with minimal handholds. Every move on this kind of terrain requires surgical precision and colossal physical endurance. The athlete is solving a complex spatial puzzle at a massive height. Eyewitnesses at base camp, armed with powerful optics, follow a tiny dot as it glides smoothly and confidently up the harsh rock face. This ascent, stunning in its purity and technique, earns Evgeny a well-deserved first place in the competition. Word of the talented and audacious Siberian begins to spread quickly through the tight-knit climbing circles. The year is now 2009. The icy arena for his next battle is the Winter Championship of Russia. Evgeny heads straight for the wild Kodar Range. Picture it, a remote wilderness, untouched by civilization, where piercing winds instantly freeze any exposed skin. In these brutal conditions, Glazunov successfully completes a first ascent. He literally forges a brand new route where no one has ever set foot before. He becomes a pioneer, erasing the blank spots from the map of the climbing world. For this outstanding passage through frost and sheer rock, Evgeny takes a respectable second place at the prestigious All-Russian Championship. But the competitive trials of 2009 are only just getting started. Soon, Evgeny arrives at the championship in the scenic but dangerous Ergaki Rock District. Here, a true endurance marathon begins. The competition rules dictate an extremely demanding pace. An invisible stopwatch mercilessly counts down every precious hour of daylight, creating immense psychological pressure. Journalists from climbing magazines note the results in their notebooks with sheer amazement. Glazunov completes 6 incredibly difficult grade 5B rock routes, one after another. Each one of these routes would normally drain a team of its physical resources. Yet Evgeny pulls off a stunning, non-stop series. This grueling rock marathon takes 14 days. Exactly 2 weeks of a relentless, exhausting battle against treacherous terrain, gravity, and his own mounting fatigue. With these victories, he definitively cements his status as a technical master of Russian mountaineering. One wrong step on a sheer cliff can instantly claim 2 lives. In climbing, your rope partner becomes your second heart, your extra set of lungs, and your only safety net. After grueling trials and incredible triumphs at rock climbing championships, Evgeny Glazunov makes a pivotal decision. He decides to team up, combining his immense athletic ambitions with those of his own younger brother, Sergei. The blood tie instantly transforms into a flawless athletic machine. Experienced rescuers at base camps often watch different teams at work. Usually, total strangers spend years getting used to each other, painstakingly learning to understand their partner just from the slight tension on a life-saving rope. The Glazunov brothers completely shatter this established norm. They practically read each other's minds, instantly forming one of the strongest and most technically perfect climbing partnerships in all of Russia. Their competitors at championships can only watch in silent, sincere admiration at their phenomenal speed on harsh terrain. In the professional world, the brothers quickly gain a reputation as pioneers of a totally unique style. They proudly call their innovative approach by the bold term, aggressive classicism. It's like a classic disciplined game of chess, but suddenly played by daring grandmasters at the speed of a grueling sprint. The Glazunovs deliberately choose the most complex, intricate, and intimidating lines on the mountain map. Instead of a long, heavy siege of the mountain with multiple intermediate camps, they launch a powerful, high-speed assault on their chosen route. The invisible stopwatch is always working mercilessly against them because the treacherous mountain weather can change in the blink of an eye. A fast, uncompromising ascent significantly reduces their time in the objective danger zone of constant rockfalls and threatening snow cornices. Sports reporters covering the championships can barely keep up with their astounding new achievements. Through the long focus lenses of their cameras, they see 2 swift figures on the vertical face, working like a single, perfectly tuned engine. The time comes for a grand and truly terrifying high-altitude test. Working as an unbreakable team, the brothers confidently set their sights on a colossal goal. Together, they successfully summit the famous 7,000er Communism Peak. The icy steep slopes of the Great Giant try to stop them with piercing gale-force winds and a critical lack of oxygen. At such an extreme altitude, every breath is a struggle, and the muscles are constantly pushed to their breaking point. Their brotherly mental support and aggressive speed tactics allow them to break through this invisible high-altitude ceiling and stand confidently on the coveted summit. But their incredible skill constantly demands to be honed on new and challenging arenas. The rugged Ala Archa region in Kyrgyzstan becomes their ideal training and competition ground. Its rock bastions are historically famous for their harsh, icy character and extreme technical difficulty. The Glazunov brothers become regular visitors and perennial favorites here. They compete methodically, beautifully, and with incredible results in all the difficult championships held there. Every new vertical wall they brilliantly conquer in Ala Archa adds another gold medal to their family's collection. Their partnership works flawlessly, demonstrating a perfect and, for many, an unattainable balance between the audacity of their vision and the supreme class of its execution. The brotherly tandem firmly and definitively takes its place at the very top of Russian mountaineering, 250 times. That's how many times one man voluntarily stepped out to face the roaring wind and vertical walls. While the Glazunov brothers are triumphantly crushing their rivals on the rock bastions of Ala Archa, Evgeny is methodically forging his own rock-solid professional status. Sports reporters can barely keep up with his packed schedule. Over the course of his phenomenally packed career, he completed 250 different ascents. Just try to imagine the true scale of that colossal number. If you add up all the days Evgeny spent on harsh terrain, it would amount to years of non-stop battle against gravity, extreme cold, and human fatigue. Every single one of those expeditions drains the maximum amount of resources. Time marches on, and soon it's 2013. Evgeny Glazunov officially wins the most prestigious title, champion of Russia in mountaineering. The competition at this level is always brutal. Eyewitnesses and judges alike noted his unique ability to remain completely unflappable, even in the most critical situations. 3 years later, in 2016, he makes a triumphant return, once again claiming the top gold medal at the national championship. The country's sports authorities officially award Glazunov the high and honorable title of Master of Sport of Russia. This well-earned badge becomes solid proof of his elite status. But personal medals alone were no longer enough for Evgeny. Now, let's look at the situation through the wide-open eyes of a novice climber. You're standing at the foot of a massive rock face, your heart pounding with a primal fear of heights, and your main safety line is being held by the reigning national champion. Evgeny successfully completes the necessary training and becomes a certified second-category mountaineering instructor. Glazunov makes a bold decision and takes an immense weight on his shoulders. He founds his very own mountaineering school, giving it the proud and symbolic name Mountains of Baikal. Being an instructor demands a completely different, analytical mindset. Risking your own life on a sheer ice cornice is one thing. Guaranteeing the absolute safety of inexperienced students thousands of meters up, that's a whole different ballgame. The price of a mistake here is infinitely higher. Within his school, he personally trains and meticulously prepares dozens of new athletes. He spends long hours freezing at exposed belay stations, methodically explaining the mechanics of weight distribution on rock, teaching the proper technique for using ice axes, and showing them how to accurately predict the treacherous mountain weather. Evgeny literally pours a piece of his vast experience into every single student. Under his watchful eye, yesterday's timid beginners gradually transform into strong, skilled, and confident climbers. The Mountains of Baikal quickly gains a well-deserved reputation in the community. Evgeny Glazunov is building a whole new generation of competent alpinists around him, solidifying his status as a trusted mentor. 7,145 meters of sheer vertical ice, waiting to be conquered. From the measured work of a caring mentor on the shores of his native Baikal, Evgeny takes a decisive step into the most extreme mountain range on the planet. The summer of 2018 arrives. The Glazunov brothers, along with an ambitious team, travel to distant Pakistan. Their target, the intimidating and majestic Latok Massif in the harsh Karakoram. The expedition's focus is the legendary North Ridge. In the professional climbing community, this massive line has the status of an absolute enigma, a terrifying, impregnable fortress. For decades, the world's best athletes have tried to ascend this giant blade of rock. Time and time again, the mountain has thrown off confident contenders with powerful avalanches and ice storms. Any experienced high-altitude coordinator would confirm the scale of preparation in the camp is simply staggering. Success on such complex terrain depends directly on the meticulous calculation of every single detail. There's the constant effect of a ticking clock. The local weather changes in a flash, atmospheric pressure fluctuates wildly, and the team has only a tiny window for a safe ascent. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Evgeny Glazunov takes control of a huge volume of critically important organizational work. He is fully responsible for the incredibly complex base logistics of this grueling expedition. Every safety rope, every lightweight gas canister, every tiny portion of specialized food passes through his hands for strict accounting. Evgeny takes on another fundamental task. He is responsible for ensuring uninterrupted radio communication for the entire group. At such an immense altitude, amidst the raging elements, a confident voice on the radio is the only fragile thread connecting the assault team to the safe world below. Evgeny voluntarily becomes the expedition's analytical center. He tunes the equipment, battles constant radio interference from the granite massifs, continuously scans the latest weather reports, and listens intently to the airwaves. And then, the moment of truth arrives. The heavens grant a brief window of opportunity. The thick clouds part. An unexpected fact becomes clear to many observers. Evgeny himself is not taking part in the final summit push. He consciously stays below, at the control console, yielding his place on the sharp end of the attack. Two of the strongest and most prepared members set out for the decisive assault on the terrifying vertical wall. They are his own younger brother, Sergei Glazunov, and the incredibly experienced high-altitude climber, Alexander Gukov. Sports journalists around the world are glued to the tiny dots of the satellite tracker. Meter by meter, Sergei and Alexander fight their way up. The terrain demands a colossal physical effort. The climbers overcome vertical granite slabs and overhanging ice cornices, working at their absolute limit. The icy wind gradually picks up, and the temperature plummets. Down below, in the cold tent of base camp, Evgeny doesn't leave the radio. He methodically makes regular contact, adjusts their route through powerful optics, and rigorously monitors the pair's condition. The guys are working confidently and powerfully on the legendary North Ridge, step by step, getting closer to the coveted mark of 7,145 meters. The radio speaker suddenly explodes with a deafening crackle, followed by an ominous silence. But instead of a triumphant report from the summit, base camp is plunged into an icy nightmare. The date is July 26, 2018. Exhausted from the multi-day assault, the pair begins the grueling journey down. They gave everything on the ascent, and now every step requires a colossal effort of will. The attempt to descend from the summit of Latok, one turns into a full-blown catastrophe. The vertical granite of the Karakoram brutally punishes the slightest fatigue. For Alexander Gukov, this wall instantly becomes a death trap. At the terrifying altitude of 6,200 meters, the irreversible happens. One brief moment, a microscopic chip of rock, or a random failure in the safety system leads to fatal consequences. Evgeny's younger brother, Sergei Glazunov, suddenly falls from the sheer wall. The merciless pull of gravity drags him into the deep abyss. Alexander is left completely alone, pinned to the icy rock face in the middle of an approaching storm. Specialists at the coordination center below watch in horror as the scale of the drama unfolds. Gukov is completely stranded at a massive altitude. But the most terrifying detail of this accident is revealed during a radio exchange. During Sergei's rapid fall, Alexander loses all of his vital equipment. The ropes for further descent, the pitons, the gas supplies for melting snow, all of this life-saving gear vanishes into the chasm along with his partner. A ruthless countdown timer begins immediately. At over 6,000 meters, with no way to move down and no hot water, the human body gives up incredibly fast. Military pilots perform a true miracle of aviation, pushing their machines beyond their technical limits. The Pakistani rescue helicopters that arrive at the scene of the tragedy make pass after pass at the impregnable rock wall. The rotor blades slice through the thin air, critically close to the granite ledges. They manage to conduct a unique operation, evacuating the exhausted Gukov from the wall on a long line. Simultaneously, the best climbers continue a visual search for Sergei. Rescuers scan the complex terrain and the crevasse-ridden glaciers at the base, meter by meter. But harsh nature dictates its own rules. The rescue teams are never able to locate and recover Sergei's body. Remaining by the radio in base camp, Evgeny Glazunov listens to the pilot's dry reports and accepts the terrible reality. For him, this July day divides his entire life into two completely different eras. He has lost an outstanding athlete. Evgeny has lost his own younger brother, the closest person in his life, and his main climbing partner, with whom he had conquered the most difficult peaks. The famous unbreakable Glazunov partnership is now forever a part of world mountaineering history. The emptiness around you becomes deafening when your partner is left on the mountain forever. Descending from the icy slopes of the Karakoram, Evgeny Glazunov brings home a severe and completely incurable psychological trauma. The shadow of this immense loss follows him constantly, changing his very perception of reality. To an outsider, the logical choice would be to walk away from the sport forever, to forget the heights and choose a quiet, safe life on level ground. However, the mountains have a death grip on him. Despite the horrific tragedy, Evgeny makes an uncompromising decision. He has absolutely no intention of giving up extreme high-altitude climbing. On the contrary, the harsh rock face becomes the only place where he feels truly alive. The strict sports officials react to Glazunov's new reality with outright hostility. In the high offices of the Russian Mountaineering Federation, a serious and irreconcilable conflict is brewing. During this period, the official system heavily regulates the sport, imposing strict limits and actively discouraging daring solo ascents. The officials methodically demand work in proven teams, the submission of approved multi-stage plans, and unconditional compliance with strict safety rules. For Evgeny, who has forever lost his perfect brotherly bond, these systemic constraints become unbearable. He is simply not mentally ready to look for a new partner. Evgeny makes a radical move, completely cutting all the safety lines of bureaucracy. He makes a conscious decision to break away from the official Russian Mountaineering Federation. It's a move that comes with a huge practical cost. Glazunov willingly gives up his official sports insurance. From now on, if there's an unforeseen accident high on the mountain, he can no longer count on the guaranteed emergency support from elite rescue teams, paid for by the Federation. At the same time, he instantly loses access to any and all specialized funding. Government grants for expensive specialized gear, for flights to remote base camps, and for complex visas, they all vanish in an instant. From this point on, he's on his own, handling every single financial and logistical challenge of his complex expeditions. He now takes on a mountain of work, becoming his own expedition manager, accountant, and logistics coordinator, all at once. Normally, a meeting between a top athlete and a generous potential investor follows the rigid laws of marketing. Big brands demand beautiful pictures, bright logos on the gear, and regular positive updates on social media. But Evgeny flatly refuses to play by these imposed marketing rules. He often clashes and clashes hard with potential sponsors. The mountaineer is an open and vocal critic of the growing commercialization of the mountains. For him, the harsh peaks are an arena for an honest battle with oneself. But the modern industry is turning these majestic giants into a mundane, comfortable amusement park for wealthy clients. Evgeny despises the preset commercial ropes and the crowds of hired helpers. He rejects any and all corporate compromises. Evgeny would rather cut back hard on personal comforts, fly on cheap airlines, and sleep in Spartan conditions, just to maintain his complete freedom of action. Without looking back at anyone else's obligations, he firmly steps onto a very difficult path, where there is only his own will and the icy vertical walls. 100 grams of extra weight in a backpack can cost a decisive advantage on the route. Leaving behind all the bureaucratic barriers and noisy arguments with sponsors, Evgeny Glazunov rewrites his own laws of survival at extreme altitude. After the fateful year of 2018, he radically and permanently changes the philosophy of his extreme ascents. The huge, noisy teams and reliable rope partners are left in the past. Now, on the frozen sheer cliffs, the only sounds are the strike of his own ice axe and his rhythmic breathing. He completely transitions to the terrifying format of world-class solo ascents. Solitude on a vertical face demands crystal-clear consciousness. Any experienced gear expert would call such a transformation utter madness. A traditional high-altitude expedition hauls up gigantic, unwieldy duffel bags, kilometers of thick steel ropes, powerful gas stoves, and huge reserves of high-calorie food. Glazunov ruthlessly leaves all this familiar, safety net cargo far below in base camp. He becomes the most active practitioner and the main evangelist of the brutally minimalist, fast and light style. This uncompromising, innovative approach demands the maximum, sometimes truly shocking, reduction in gear weight for one single purpose. That purpose is achieving the highest possible speed on a vertical wall. Picture a vertical mountain as a giant natural clock, one that's constantly shedding tons of ice and rock. The slower you crawl up the wall, the higher the mathematical probability of being caught in this devastating barrage. Understanding these harsh rules, the alpinist deliberately rejects traditional framed storm tents. He permanently removes thick-down sleeping bags from his minimalist assault pack and leaves all non-essential food at the base. Evgeny takes with him the absolute minimum amount of gear that allows him to keep moving forward without stopping. Fellow climbers in the advanced camps often watch with utter amazement as a lone, swift figure confidently heads out onto a route of the highest difficulty category. This radical race-like tactic is driven by the ironclad logic of a seasoned strategist. The ultralight gear allows Glazunov to practically dance up the granite monolith several times faster than heavy groups loaded down with rescue equipment. This calculated decision drastically reduces the total time the athlete spends in the zone of constant objective danger. He simply manages to get through the most treacherous sections before the mountain starts to shed its crumbling rock. However, this incredible freedom of movement comes at a colossal price. Embedded in this perfectly functioning formula for speed is a huge, hidden threat. The local mountain weather is completely unpredictable and can shatter the most accurate forecasts from experienced meteorologists in an instant. The complete, conscious lack of reliable, heavy bivouac gear strips Evgeny of a critically important safety margin in the face of a sudden storm. If a severe frost hits or a blizzard starts on a difficult route, the solo climber has absolutely no chance to wait out the storm. He accepts this high-stakes gamble, relying solely on his astonishing endurance. Minus 30 degrees Celsius and 1.5 kilometers of sheer granite. This is what the final test of strength looks like. After long years of honing his radical solo tactics, Evgeny Glazunov decides to apply them in the most brutal conditions imaginable. The calendar reads a harsh February 2024. The alpinist organizes a completely new, ambitious solo expedition. He travels to the distant mountains of Kyrgyzstan, deep into the wild gorges. There, his main objective towers above, the formidable Aksu Peak, piercing the cold sky at an altitude of 5,355 meters. This massive summit in the Turkestan range has always been known for its merciless nature, and has historically deterred many renowned athletes. In the annals of Soviet mountaineering, this giant mountain always had a notorious reputation. Of all the available routes to the top, Glazunov chooses the most intimidating option, the famous monolithic granite north face. The vertical drop here is over 1,500 meters of sheer rock. Before him stood a colossal icy mirror of solid stone, reaching straight into the clouds. Evgeny plans to ascend the legendary Igor Chaplinsky route completely alone, without any support whatsoever. This extremely difficult route is officially rated 6B, the highest, most extreme difficulty rating in mountaineering. This incredibly dangerous and long route was first successfully climbed back in the distant year of 1988 by a large, heavy, and well-equipped team. Now, a single man is challenging a wall that usually requires the efforts of an entire, well-coordinated team of masters. The specifics of the Aksu North Face dictate their own harsh technical rules. The absolutely smooth winter granite is almost devoid of reliable natural holds. Such a monumental ascent requires Evgeny to use a delicate, almost jeweler-like technique with artificial points of aid. The alpinist must work masterfully with his gear on an overhanging slope. He painstakingly places microscopic pieces of metal gear into the thinnest cracks in the rock, hangs special lightweight ladders from them, smoothly transfers his entire body weight onto one dubious point, and then repeats this grueling acrobatic cycle thousands of times in a row. Every single movement is calculated down to the millimeter. The slightest error in judging the integrity of the rock would mean an instant fall. Meanwhile, a merciless natural timer begins to tick. The conditions on the massive wall turn out to be truly extreme, far beyond the limits of normal human capability. The February mountain frost rapidly drops below minus 30 degrees Celsius. At the same time, a strong, bone-chilling wind constantly rages on the exposed vertical face. It instantly sucks the precious crumbs of warmth from the soloist's lightweight storm gear. His fingers, under thick gloves, quickly lose feeling, and the icy metal of the carabiners burns his hands with every touch. The harsh style of fast minimalism forces Glazunov to move forward continuously, to work at his maximum heart rate just to stay warm and keep his inner fire burning. Ahead of the athlete are grueling days of the toughest vertical work, demanding crystal-clear concentration and phenomenal physical endurance. 4 days alone with the vertical abyss, where the cold seizes every movement. In early, frosty February, the wild, snow-covered Lyalyak Gorge greets Evgeny Glazunov with a deafening, ringing silence. He successfully arrives at base camp, setting up his tiny launch pad right at the foot of the sleeping granite giant. The local Kyrgyz guides watch with a sense of awe. In the middle of the vast snowy expanse, just one man is calmly preparing for battle with an enormous mountain. Evgeny immediately begins the crucial physiological process of adapting his body to the harsh altitude. He completes all the necessary, strictly calculated acclimatization. The alpinist makes a series of exhausting training hikes, getting his heart used to the severe oxygen deprivation, and fully completes his preparation for his unprecedented solo assault. On the 12th of February, the natural timer begins its relentless countdown. Glazunov leaves the safety of the ground and starts up the route. From the 12th to the 15th of February, Evgeny works continuously and with incredible difficulty on the sheer granite wall of Aksu Peak. Imagine yourself in his place. You are hanging in a ringing void, clinging with the tips of your steel crampons to microscopic irregularities on the icy terrain. In complete solitude, he successfully overcomes all the key technical sections of this terrifying route. The smooth, overhanging slopes force him to constantly apply his delicate, precise aid climbing skills. He masterfully hammers thin metal pitons into cracks invisible to the naked eye, carefully hangs his lightweight webbing ladders from them, and smoothly transfers his entire body weight onto them. Every single one of these movements consumes a colossal amount of energy, and any imprecision, any tremor in his hands, threatens an immediate fall. Hurricane-force winds try to rip him from the wall, siphoning the last precious remnants of warmth from his storm gear. Large teams tackle such dangerous sections by taking turns, constantly swapping the lead climber and giving each other time to catch their breath. Evgeny is denied this luxury. He's forging his own path upward, securing every step himself, hauling his own minimalist assault pack. His short nights become a true test of human will, hours of half-sleep, suspended in his harness, as the frost chills him to the bone, with a kilometer-deep black abyss gaping below. On February 16th, the long-awaited turning point of the entire expedition arrives. In the afternoon, the intense days-long battle against brutal gravity finally culminates in a well-deserved victory. With one last, incredibly powerful effort, Glazunov pulls himself over the edge of the cliff and confidently steps onto the gentler slope of the summit ridge of Aksu. The bright, blinding winter sun illuminates his weary face, caked in a thick layer of frost. The immense vertical trap is now forever far below. The technical part of this incredibly complex, unthinkable solo winter ascent is now officially and completely finished. He has achieved his ambitious goal, having climbed the giant rock bastion in the purest, most uncompromising style of alpinism. The grand route is complete, and Evgeny is standing on the summit. A short satellite signal from the top forever splits his story in two. The icy evening of February 16th sets in, and the bright sun rapidly disappears behind the jagged horizon of the Kyrgyzstan range. The temperature at this immense altitude plummets to critical levels, feeling like it's freezing the very air you breathe. It's in these harsh, bone-chilling minutes that Evgeny Glazunov makes his strictly scheduled check-in call. He pulls out the ice-covered device and makes the most important call to his close friend. This man has taken on the grueling role of chief coordinator for the entire solo expedition and is now on full standby back in civilization. For the coordinator on the other end, these hours become an endless torture of uncertainty. For days, he has been hypnotizing the silent speaker, waiting for the slightest sign of life from the mountain. The crushing silence is maddening. And then, the long-awaited signal breaks through. Piercing through the heavy atmospheric interference, the crackle of static, and the howl of the hurricane-force wind comes the confident, though infinitely weary, voice of the climber. Evgeny reports the current situation with utmost clarity. He says that he feels physically fine, that his body's reserves are holding up, and that the monumental solo ascent is a complete success. The technical objective is 100% complete. The vertical granite wall has been conquered. But this is precisely where the most treacherous and merciless trap of high-altitude sport lies. Sports analysts and investigators know the grim statistics all too well. The lion's share of catastrophes happen on the way back down. Once the coveted summit is beneath your feet, the adrenaline begins to fade, and concentration inevitably drops due to accumulated physical exhaustion. Glazunov knows these cruel rules of the high-altitude game inside and out. So, without the slightest delay, he confirms his next logical step to the coordinator. He will immediately, without a long pause for triumph, begin his descent along the same route he just climbed. There is simply no time for celebration or extended rest. Every extra minute spent in such a harsh frost mercilessly burns away the remaining precious life energy. Evgeny details his chosen retreat tactic. He plans to use a classic rope rappel for the fastest possible return to the safe base in the gorge. To understand the mechanics of this process, imagine a rapid, tightly controlled descent down a fixed rope, using a special braking device. The climber literally slides down a thin nylon line, entrusting his entire weight to his gear, suspended directly over a bottomless black abyss. This technique requires ironclad muscle memory in every movement and an absolutely clear mind. A person must, time and time again, set up new rappel anchors on the bare rock, thread the rope, pull it down after him, and step back out into the void. A single improperly placed piece of protection in a crack threatens an immediate fatal outcome. The radical fast and light style of climbing dictates uncompromising conditions. A solo climber has absolutely no life-saving bivouac gear to safely wait out the approaching frozen night. A high-speed descent becomes his only available tool for survival. The coordinator on the other end of the satellite channel carefully notes all the technical details of the plan, confirms the check-in times, wishes him luck, and ends the call. In the distant, warm headquarters, a long-awaited sense of relief from the accomplished mission hangs in the air for a brief second. However, this dry, professional conversation with his friend is forever recorded in the official logs, as the last time the distinguished alpinist Evgeny Glazunov would ever make contact with the outside world. 3 days of dead silence on the radio shatters the nerves of even the toughest people. From February 17th to the 19th, the expedition's coordination headquarters is plunged into a terrifying information vacuum. The scheduled, strictly mandatory communication sessions pass one after another, but all they hear from the base camp radio is the indifferent hiss of static. Evgeny Glazunov has simply vanished from the radar. The situation rapidly spirals out of the coordinator's control when the climber completely misses the team's established deadline for returning to base camp. In extreme high-altitude sports, this final deadline acts as a blaring red flag. If an athlete has not descended by the appointed time and shows no signs of activity, it means a critical emergency has occurred on the vertical route. Dry meteorological reports for the area only confirm the scale of the unfolding disaster. In the vicinity of Aksu Peak, a sharp, incredibly powerful deterioration of weather conditions begins. The local microclimate shows its most brutal and merciless side. The sky over the Lyaliak Gorge becomes heavy with leaden clouds, and a severe snowstorm engulfs the giant mountain. Visibility on the terrain drops to almost zero, and the gale-force wind turns the smooth granite wall into a veritable frozen wind tunnel. Observers below realize a terrible fact: horror. A lone athlete, without any warm bivouac gear, is right now caught inside this roaring cyclone. The survival clock is ticking, counting down the last reserves of human endurance. On February 20th, the professional climbing community finally sounds a full-scale alarm. Evgeny's long, unnatural silence mobilizes hundreds of concerned people. Glazunov's close friends and his most experienced, mountain-tested colleagues urgently begin to organize a large-scale search operation. Operational headquarters are formed in different cities. Elite climbers frantically pack their assault packs, prepare special equipment, and buy tickets for the next flights to Kyrgyzstan. However, a rescue operation of such technical complexity immediately hits a harsh financial wall. To quickly deploy an advance team to the base of the cliff and conduct a proper aerial reconnaissance, a specialized high-altitude helicopter is required. A flight for such a heavy aircraft costs a colossal amount of money. His friends make the only logical decision possible. They instantly launch an emergency crowdfunding campaign online to urgently pay for the aviation and the hard work of professional rescuers. What follows is a stunning display of solidarity from the mountaineering brotherhood. The alarming news about the soloist who has gone missing on the vertical wall spreads like wildfire through all the relevant information channels. Everyday hikers and sports veterans respond instantly. The necessary, truly gigantic sum to start the search operation is raised by the close-knit community in record time. The helicopter company receives full financial confirmation to take off, and a motivated group of rescuers rushes towards the foot of Aksu Peak. The wind hits their faces with the force of a locomotive, instantly turning warm breath into sharp ice. On February 22nd, the thumping of heavy rotor blades tears through the thick blanket of snow over the Lialiak Gorge. With great difficulty, the helicopter hovers at the base of the giant granite fortress. An advance team disembarks from it, directly onto the frozen glacier. One look at the grim faces of these men says it all. This compact and highly mobile search party consists exclusively of close friends and the most experienced mountain-tested colleagues of Evgeny Glazunov. The people who for years had shared a tent and a safety rope with him now silently follow his invisible trail. They are heading directly onto the icy wall of Aksu Peak. To search for a missing comrade on a vertical mirror of rock is to subject one's psyche to enormous pressure. The rescue operation is taking place in the most severe, utterly extreme winter conditions on a sheer rock face. It's essentially a giant natural freezer stood on its end. The brutal cold seizes their muscles, and every movement in their thick, high-altitude gear drains a massive amount of precious energy. The rescuers are pushing themselves to the absolute limit, forging a path through the biting wind, hammering steel anchors into ice-choked cracks. An invisible clock is ticking relentlessly in the back of their minds. The short February day is fading fast, and with every passing hour, the temperature plummets to critical lows. Foot by foot, the lead team meticulously scans the immense wall. They focus all their attention on what they believe was Evgeny's logical line of descent. The leader of the rescue party carries the crushing weight of responsibility for this ascent. He hangs over an endless void, his eyes straining to examine every ledge, every overhanging icicle. His gaze desperately searches for the smallest clue: a discarded sling on a rock, a fresh metal scratch from steel crampons, a bright shred of rappel cord. The work is agonizingly slow. Gale force winds constantly bury any possible tracks under a blanket of dry snow. This grueling process is like trying to find a needle in a giant, icy labyrinth. The team regularly radios the base camp, reporting the same empty summary time and time again. The tension within the group is gradually reaching its breaking point. The search on this unforgiving vertical wall has been going on for several brutal days. The rescuers are literally living on the cliff face, setting up cold, hanging belays directly over a kilometer-deep black abyss. With the first rays of the dim winter sun, they resume their methodical scan of the rock. February 23rd and February 24th fly by in a state of constant, exhausting struggle against gravity and the piercing cold. The group is giving it 100%, completely draining their physical reserves. The unprecedented search continues non-stop until the 25th of February. Rappel by rappel, rope by rope, the team steadily narrows the zone of uncertainty in this colossal stone trap. Great tragedy often hides just one step away from the safety of solid ground. Late in that bleak February, a short, unbearably heavy message cuts through the search frequency's static. The lead rescue team, dangling from their icy ropes, has finally made visual contact with the body of Evgeny Glazunov on the sheer face of Aksu Peak. The immense ringing tension of the past few weeks of relentless searching is instantly replaced by a deep, hollow emptiness. Look at this grim scene through the eyes of his rescuer and friend. He stares intently through the blizzard at the gray granite monolith and sees a motionless figure. The mystery of the experienced climber's disappearance is finally solved. Here, on the frozen cliffs of the Kyrgyzstan range, how exactly does a solo climber of such a colossal skill level die? The arriving experts and colleagues begin to painstakingly piece together this terrifying puzzle of his final seconds. Every tiny detail of his ice-caked equipment tells its own silent story. The tragedy occurred during a high-speed rappel. Evgeny was making a technical, calculated descent from the summit ridge, leaving the most terrifying heights behind him. He was doing everything right, strictly following his plan for an extreme retreat from the approaching storm. But a giant mountain is always a living, constantly eroding mechanism. Analysis of the scene reveals the harsh truth. The actual cause of the climber's sudden death was a massive rockfall. The granite face, under the stress of extreme temperature swings, lost its structural integrity. Massive blocks of rock unexpectedly broke free from the upper sections of the wall and hurtled down with terrifying speed. This deadly hail of stone fell almost silently, completely masked by the roaring gale. The lone athlete didn't have a fraction of a second to react. The rockfall struck Evgeny at his most vulnerable and technically complex moment. A detailed examination of the safety gear on the rock face reveals a horrifying picture to the investigators. The catastrophe happened either right at a belay station or in the middle of a changeover. Imagine the mechanics of it. A climber rappels to the end of one fixed rope, anchors himself securely to the rock, removes his descender, and carefully transfers it to the next line. During this brief intermediate phase, the person is completely static. He is locked to the granite slab, physically unable to make any sudden move to dodge or evade. A direct hit from a heavy piece of rock ended the great ascent in an instant. The cruelest part of this whole story lies in the brutal math of his journey. The fatal accident happened at the very end of an incredibly difficult, multi-day descent. Evgeny had successfully survived the grueling summit push, endured the extreme cold of nights without bivouac gear, and navigated the most dangerous overhanging sections. He was just a few short rope lengths away from the safe scree slope at the base of the wall. The welcoming, flat glacier was literally beneath his feet. A mere couple of 100 meters separated the conqueror of a legendary route from level ground, but harsh nature delivered the final blow right on the threshold of his triumphant return to base. The mountains take the great masters in absolute silence, leaving us with a deafening echo. The tragic news from the frozen slopes of Aksu spread like wildfire across every continent, closing this incredible chapter forever. The announcement of the distinguished solo climber's death sent a deep, genuine shock through the professional community. The news feeds of specialized publications were instantly filled with dozens of heartfelt obituaries from people stunned by the sudden loss. Seasoned sports journalists who had followed his phenomenal achievements for years took the loss as a personal tragedy. The editor of the leading climbing portal, Mountain.ru, publicly called the late athlete one of the last romantics. And in those words lies a colossal, incredibly accurate truth. Glazunov truly did constantly challenge the pragmatic rules of the modern era, always choosing a pure, primal struggle with the mighty forces of nature. Now, let's look at the hard historical numbers, which represent years of titanic effort and ultimate risk. In his 22-year, non-stop, incredibly rich career, Evgeny completed 17 first ascents of new routes. This is the truly meticulous work of a pioneer. Where before him there was only a smooth, intimidating blank on the maps, he confidently blazed his own signature path. Of this impressive list, exactly 8 routes have an officially confirmed high difficulty rating of 5A and 5B. Each such line demands iron will, perfect technique, and a readiness to look danger in the face. These routes are now forever etched into the world's climbing catalogs, and new generations of climbers study the diagrams drawn by the hand of the Siberian master with immense respect. But Glazunov's greatest wealth is measured by completely different standards. For a young climber standing at the foot of a cliff, his legacy isn't just a story, it's a living blueprint. Evgeny leaves behind a powerful, truly active school called Gori Baikala. He personally invested his colossal experience, his philosophy, and his understanding of safe work on the rock into dozens of well-trained, ambitious students. Right now, these young men and women are carrying on his beloved work. They are tying their knots correctly, reliably belaying each other on sheer overhangs, and confidently pushing towards new heights, using the very knowledge their mentor passed on to them. The school continues to live, to grow, and to produce strong climbers. Evgeny will forever be a part of mountaineering history, as a bright symbol of absolutely uncompromising and ethical alpinism. He flatly refused to play by the imposed commercial rules of the game, rejected any convenient compromises, and always placed purity of style above personal comfort. His approach demanded maximum honesty with himself and with the unforgiving rock. This Siberian's life was cut short in his prime, but his incredible example of iron will immense dedication and courage will forever remain a flawless beacon for all future generations of peak conquerors.